And thanks to you at home for joining us here this hour. Really happy to have you here. So Harvard is standing up and fighting against Trump's threats and attacks against universities. They are fighting instead of making concessions and giving in. Today, yet another law firm that Trump targeted has won against him in court. This time it was the firm Sussman Godfrey. The judge called what Trump is doing in threatening this firm, quote, a shocking abuse of power. The judge blocked Trump from essentially continuing to go after the firm. Not to state the obvious or anything, but that firm won that ruling because they chose to fight him instead of making concessions to him and giving in. In fact, every law firm that has fought Trump's attacks in court thus far has won. And that makes it really embarrassing to be one of the law firms that chose not to fight him, right? I mean, you didn't have to give in. You would have won in court if you'd fought it, but you gave in anyway. Bad call, right? Why would anyone hire you to fight for them on anything ever? Save yourself, save your firm, get out of your so-called deal with Trump and fight back. Because, hey, look, everybody who's fighting back is winning. Whereas in the meantime, you've destroyed your law firm's reputation for eternity. Again, until you change your mind. Today, also, the federal judge hearing the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia told the Trump administration that they do not have the option to disobey the court's order to return Mr. Abrego Garcia to the United States. We will have more on that in a moment. It was a very dramatic confrontation in court today. Tonight, we've got tens of thousands of people turning out right now on a Tuesday to see Senator Bernie Sanders and Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in two back-to-back anti-Trump rallies they are holding in Bakersfield and then in Folsom, California today. Tens of thousands of people turning out for these two events. Again, these guys turned out 56,000 people over 2 nights in LA and Salt Lake City just this weekend. Now they are tearing up basically Central California as we speak. I mean, all this stuff happening on one day. It's on. It is absolutely on. And we're going to have more on all of those stories over the course of the hour tonight. So, like I said, I'm very, very happy that you're here. It's a big show, especially for a Tuesday. It feels like a big show. It feels like a Friday already. But we're gonna start tonight with something that is quite different. We're starting tonight with a whistleblower story, and a whistleblower who is here tonight live along with his attorney. And let me tell you a little bit why we are starting with this story. So we've been focusing a lot on the way that people are standing up to try to block what Trump is doing, to try to show that they disagree with Trump, to show their resistance to what he's trying to do. And I think that's the real story in the country. But because we've been really focusing on that, we sometimes don't get into the nitty-gritty of the sort of strategy of what Trump is doing. And tonight's one of those nights that we're going to look at it a little bit. Because it turns out, when you are in the middle of an attempted authoritarian takeover of your country, one of the things that happens is that the actions of the government get very opaque. It gets harder to figure out what they're doing. In contrast with a normal, small d Democratic administration, when you're in the midst of a would-be authoritarian takeover, official pronouncements from the government, like from White House spokespeople, they just become bombastic propaganda with no factual content that you can't rely on for the truth of what's being asserted. They ignore public records requests wholesale. They, for example, have fired all the people who are responsible for handling public communications in a professional way. They've even fired the people who are responsible for handling FOIA requests. And of course, it is a hallmark of authoritarian governance that you can't allow a free press, right? That extends in our time, in our experience, to everything from Trump's bombastic threats to try to intimidate news organizations and individual reporters from being critical of him or asking hard questions of him. It extends from that to using the various powers of the government to take away broadcast licenses or to damage the sources of funding for news organizations. And of course, it applies to him and his allies trying to sue various news organizations into oblivion. As of yesterday, it would also seem to appear to include the administration defying a direct court order that they have to allow the Associated Press back into the White House press pool. They have been ordered to do that, and they are not doing it. It is central to authoritarian governance that the press must be shut down, beaten up, or cowed, so that the public doesn't learn what the government is doing in any kind of reliable and ongoing way. I mean, again, to state the obvious, authoritarian governments do not exist to do what's best for the people. So they find that it's best that the people don't find out all that much about what they're up to. Therefore, the free press has to go. And in our case, in our experience, in this time that we are living through, one other way they've been able to hide or obscure a lot of what the government is doing is by doing so much of their work through this Doge thing, through this bizarre, semi-secret, semi-governmental operation that is both led by the president's top campaign donor, Elon Musk, and officially not led by Elon Musk at all. The ostensible purpose of this very opaque, very mysterious Doge organization is to cut spending from the government, right? I mean, it's clear that that is not what they're doing, but that is how they have described the purpose of the organization. Elon Musk, the president's top campaign donor, said that at Doge he would cut $1 trillion out of the government's budget. Then he said he would cut $2 trillion out of the government's budget. Then, as of last week, he said at an all-for-the-cameras cabinet meeting that it would actually be about 92% less than that. It would be about $150 billion by next fiscal year that he and Doge were going to cut. After that, the New York Times and other news organizations pointed out that Doge's accounting of that relatively tiny amount, that $150 billion, was itself riddled with errors, and there was no way that what they were claiming to have saved added up to anywhere near $150 billion. And then after that, they took down the government website that lists what the government is actually funding and cutting, and now they're being sued for taking that down. So the claims that Doge is all about cutting wasteful spending, cutting trillions of dollars out of government, those clearly aren't true. So what's Doge doing? If it's not cutting trillions of dollars out of the government, and it's really not, then what exactly is this very opaque and mysterious part of the government up to? What is Doge up to? What is it for? Well, as always, it is most helpful to watch what they do and not what they say. And from the actions that we can observe of what Doge is doing, there's nothing about what they're doing that looks like government efficiency, right? So I think we can sort of set aside the pretext. We can set aside their claims about what they're doing, at least what they're trying to do. What are they really doing? What can we see about their activity to show us what they're doing and why? There are a few different sort of buckets that we can see in terms of what Doge is doing. And I would say the first bucket is them just breaking stuff, right? The Social Security Administration broken. So they no longer answer the phone, their website doesn't work, their field offices are totally overrun and non-functional, breaking Social Security agency. The IRS, they're doing the same, just breaking the agency. Today's April 15th, today's tax day. We'll see how well this tax season works out. Same with student loans. They shut down the education department and its handling of federal student loans. They moved student loans randomly to the Small Business Administration, which is not at all equipped to handle it. Now nobody's answering the phones or the email, and the websites don't work on student loans. Nobody knows what's happening to their student loans. So that's one sort of category of what we can see them doing. That's bucket one, right? They are breaking stuff. Bucket two, they are slashing stuff out of the government that they appear to not even understand.
You propose more than $11 billion in cuts to local and state programs addressing things like infectious disease, mental health, addiction, and childhood vaccination. Did you personally approve those cuts?
No, I'm not familiar with those cuts. But we have to go. We have to go.
There's like more than 50 pages of, of cuts that I actually went through.
The cuts were mainly DEI cuts, which the president...
There were a lot, but I'll give you, for example, about $750,000 of a University of Michigan grant into adolescent diabetes was cut. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, and that's something that we'll look at.
I didn't know that. We cut what? We cut what? I mean, you didn't cut that. Who cut it? Oh, was that Doge? Part of what Doge appears to be doing is cuts that nobody has asked for and nobody can defend. I mean, here's Kennedy at HHS saying, "Ooh, we cut adolescent diabetes research? That sounds terrible. That doesn't sound like something I'd do. I better look into that. Yeah, my dude, that's supposedly something you did." I did? What? Better look into that. I mean, the same goes with the cuts to, now famously, Ebola response and prevention. Oops, we didn't mean to cut that. And the people who handle our nuclear weapons. Oops, didn't mean to cut that. I mean, same goes presumably with the cuts to the firefighters' cancer registry, which Donald Trump himself created. That just got cut. Did Donald Trump want to cut that? Who knows? These cuts, they just, I don't know, they sort of make themselves. So there's them breaking stuff. There's them cutting stuff that they don't even appear to know they are cutting. The third bucket, I think, is stuff they do mean to cut, and they're quite gleeful about it. Things like, HIV prevention. They're delighted to cut that. Libraries, museums, the part of the National Highway Transportation Safety Board that oversees the self-driving cars at Elon Musk's Tesla company. Yeah, they're delighted to get rid of all of that sort of stuff. So these are just all the things that we can observe, right? We can observe them smashing stuff up so it doesn't work, cutting stuff that they don't understand and that maybe isn't even on purpose. We do see them cutting stuff on purpose as well. But now we're getting to what I think of as the really heavy part of it, the really heavy part of this authoritarian project. Because some of the stuff that they have been doing that has seemed inexplicable is starting to become explicable, is starting to become understandable. Because part of what we are now seeing, this many weeks into this administration, is that when it has appeared that they're just messing with various agencies or trying to access various data systems within agencies, it's not a pointless rummaging that they are doing there. It's not just rummaging around in there and flipping switches and seeing what breaks. Part of what is now emerging is that they've been in these government systems because they're trying to use the government to hurt people as much as they can. So, for example, it turns out they were messing with all the information on international students in a government database so they could target individual international students to snatch them off the street and arrest them and throw them in immigration prisons. It turns out they were messing with sensitive systems inside the IRS and the Treasury, at least in part, so they could use that data to go after immigrants as well. Turns out they were messing with sensitive systems inside the Social Security Administration because they have taught themselves that one way you can really destroy people's lives in this country is if you take the names of living people and declare them dead inside the Social Security Administration. And now on top of that, today, something new. As we have been watching the actions of this government, and particularly the opaque, hard-to-parse actions of this Doge entity that has been set up under the auspices of the president's top campaign donor, and none of us are allowed to know what they're doing, as we've been trying to figure out what they're actually doing and why, we've now got a brand new set of allegations that we've never encountered before. And if these allegations are true, they suggest an apparently sort of a new sort of bucket, a new type of behavior from these guys that we are only learning about today, thanks to a whistleblower in IT who has the technical skills to actually see what they're doing and who has now come forward to Congress and to the Office of Special Counsel, which protects whistleblowers. He has come forward to explain something else that he believes these guys are doing that we didn't know before. And if he is right, it would seem to explain yet more about what previously seemed inexplicable. What he's describing is also something that seems very, very bad and very dangerous for our country. All right, so here's the story. NPR was first to break this story today. Reporter Jenna McLaughlin publishing a more than 7,000-word piece, citing more than 30 sources. But the core of the story is based on a whistleblower disclosure from an IT staffer at the National Labor Relations Board named Daniel Baroulis. And last month, Mr. Baroulis says that DOJ staffers arrived at the headquarters of the National Labor Relations Board. He can't be positive they were from DOJ, but whoever they were, he says they accessed National Labor Relations Board data systems for about a week, and then they deleted the accounts they had created in order to work in those systems. So they got in for about a week, and then they deleted the accounts they had created to work inside those systems. Now, what's in those systems? Well, National Labor Relations Board has a lot of internal data that's really sensitive. The point of that agency is they adjudicate labor complaints at various companies. So their internal systems include a lot of really sensitive proprietary data about US companies and about their employees and about unions and about whistleblowers. It includes really sensitive stuff like witness testimony and legal information about ongoing cases. According to Mr. Baroulis' disclosure, he believes DOJ staffers took steps to make sure that whatever they did while they were inside the systems of the agency was not logged. So in the internal data systems of the agency, there were no traceable records of what they did inside the system because they configured their access to the system in ways that they could either manually or automatically remove traces of what they had done. But while they were in there, Mr. Baroulis says there was a large exfiltration of data. A large exfiltration of data, almost all text files. And when I say it was a large exfiltration, to give you a sense of how unusual this was for the agency, this screenshot from Mr. Baroulis' disclosure shows that large spike in outbound traffic leaving the agency and how unusual it was compared to normal activity on their systems. He says the logs that should have shown what that was just attributed that large exfiltration of data to a deleted account. And he says the location where the data went had been obscured. There was no listing as to where the data went. Mr. Baroulis then found that while these people were inside the system, this is worrying, they had disabled the core security systems that keep the agency's systems and data secure and private. Quoting from NPR, someone had disabled controls that would prevent insecure or unauthorized mobile devices from logging onto the system without the proper security settings. There was an interface exposed to the public internet, potentially allowing malicious actors access to the NLRB's systems. Internal alerting and monitoring systems were found to be manually turned off, and multi-factor authentication was disabled. Now, why would these guys disable all the security on the system at this agency and then leave it that way when they got out? I don't know, and neither do you. But this is also from Mr. Baroulis' whistleblower disclosure. Quote, I noticed increased logins blocked by our access policy due to those logins being out of the country. For example, in the days after DOJ accessed NLRB's systems, we noticed a user with an IP address in Russia started trying to log in. Those attempts were blocked, but they were especially alarming. Whoever was attempting to log in was using one of the newly created accounts that were used in the other DOJ-related activities. It appeared they had the correct username and password. Now, these attempted logins from Russia were only stopped, quote, due to our no out-of-country logins policy. But there were more than 20 such attempts. And what is particularly concerning is that many of these login attempts occurred within 15 minutes of those accounts being created by DOJ engineers. So, I mean, the allegations here, to sum them up, kind of go like this. Now, NBC News has not independently verified these allegations. This is simply what has been described in a whistleblower's disclosure from Mr. Baroulis. But what he is saying is this. According to what he can tell, they get in, they structure their access once they're in there so nobody can see what they're doing while they're in there. While they are in there, lots of data from this very sensitive agency gets taken to parts unknown. Then they leave all the doors unlocked and all the alarms off, and then immediately someone with an IP address in Russia starts logging into the system using one of the Doge accounts with what appears to be a working username and password. And then there's one last piece of this. Mr. Baroulis says that within the agency, they saw enough to convene a formal review of what they perceived to be a serious breach, a theft of the agency's sensitive data. They started their formal review. They prepared a request to CISA, the cybersecurity agency at Homeland Security, to help them investigate. As that process of requesting help from CISA was underway, Mr. Baroulis got a personal threat. Quote, in the days after Baroulis and his colleagues prepared a request for CISA's help investigating the breach, Baroulis found a printed letter in an envelope taped to his door, which included threatening language, sensitive personal information, and overhead pictures of him walking his dog. It is unclear who sent it, but the letter made specific reference to his decision to report the breach. Law enforcement is investigating the letter. In a letter to the House and Senate committees that oversight over NLRB, the agency here, Mr. Baroulis' lawyer, who's from the nonprofit group Whistleblower Aid, he tells the chairs and the ranking members of those committees, quote, the threatening note made clear reference to this very disclosure Mr. Baroulis was preparing for you as the proper oversight authority. While we do not know specifically who did this, we can only speculate that it involves someone with the ability to access NLRB systems. This meat space action, meaning real life, this meat space action where a threat was physically delivered to my client's home is absolutely disturbing in its manner and the implications suggested therein. Accordingly, we have been and will continue to be coordinating with appropriate law enforcement agencies. Given the aforementioned, we request that both law enforcement agencies and Congress initiate an immediate investigation into the cybersecurity breach and data exfiltration at NLRB and any other agencies where Doge has accessed internal systems. Now, we tried to get comment tonight from the White House and from NLRB, in addition to requests by NBC News for comment from NLRB and Elon Musk. There was a statement to NPR from an NLRB spokesperson in which the spokesperson denied that NLRB granted Doge access to its systems. Doge has not requested access to the agency's systems. They said an internal investigation conducted after Mr. Baroulis raised his concerns, quote, determined that no breach of agency systems occurred. The whistleblower himself and his attorney are going to join us here live next. Stay with us.